NASCAR has bad news for 2023. Bubba Wallace is outraged. Have you been following Wallace's position and his potential NASCAR future? If not, then continue watching. Stay tuned as we will be addressing all your questions in this video. But before we do, make sure you subscribe to NASCAR Live. Therefore, without further delay, let's get into it. What do you think about Wallace's punishment now that things have cooled down? Was it too harsh or not harsh enough? Anthony Damcott and Michael Nebbia examined the penalty that has garnered the most attention so far in the 2022 season. Bubba Wallace's hit on Kyle Larson in Las Vegas was despicable, and it needed to be stiffer for both drivers involved. Since the boundary has been crossed, NASCAR officials were forced to apply severe fines because the degree of violence was so extreme. Wallace received a penalty from the regulatory body, although it wasn't nearly as harsh as it could have been. One race's worth of suspension? This is it then? That is essentially a verbal rebuke. You need to be very clear that aggressive, retaliatory behavior, like Wallace's action, is not acceptable and will not be tolerated with the teams as well as the drivers advancing, whether on the track or off of it. This must be conveyed clearly. To begin with, in addition to the suspension itself, the offender should have paid a fee. Nearly every big off-track incident that occurred during the previous 10 years was dealt with financially. A collision itself, how about that? It was reminiscent of one of the most serious on-track incidents in recent memory, how Wallace pursued Larson. A Camping World Truck Series race was taking place at Texas Motor Speedway in the middle of 2011, when an accident in which Ron Hornaday was involved was caused by Kyle Busch. In that incident, Busch was involved in a crash that sent Hornaday's race into the caution zone for an entire half lap before spinning him out at almost full speed. After putting Busch in the pit for the evening, NASCAR responded harshly by suspending him from the Cup race that would happen later that weekend. Busch was also fined $50,000 for his actions. Wallace should have, at the very least, received the same punishment as the other individual. NASCAR has the chance to lead by example with 2311 Racing in addition to Wallace. They should have penalized the organization with a 50-point deduction for his violations, as well as a fine of up to $250,000 for the two in order to prove their point together. The chief operating officer of NASCAR, Steve O'Donnell, said, "We want to draw that line on what constitutes unethical behavior and be as clear as we can for our opponents on where we stand. There is no other way to achieve this goal besides levying record-high financial penalties against Wallace. It would also have an effect on 2311's standing in their competition for 5th place in owner points, which would be a hit that would ultimately lead to significant massive fines of the year." Although NASCAR had the option to impose some sort of punishment on Larson, they chose not to. "We would have deducted 50 points from Larson's score for starting the incident, 50 points from his team's score as owners, and a $25,000 fine for Larson." Following the race, the driver for Hendrick Motorsports claimed that he had made an aggressive move that had caused Wallace to hit the wall and that his rival had a reason to be furious. NASCAR had the chance to set a radical new precedent that would be risky, but they opted to just park Wallace. They also failed to adhere to their historical tradition by failing to summon both teams to the NASCAR truck after the race. They made a serious error of judgment here. The penalty, as it currently stands, provides little to support the referee's argument because they handled the situation poorly in the heat of the moment. Not quite enough, not quite brutal. When it comes to this issue, NASCAR was confronted with a difficult situation: the elimination of a driver who was in the playoffs as a result of a driver intentionally crashing another one, even though technically the driver was not even in the playoffs and is still in the running for an owner's title after being eliminated. NASCAR made a good decision on this call. The decision to suspend Bubba Wallace for just one race was the right one, regardless of what the general public may think. Kyle Larson told NBC Sports that given the rise in safety concerns and the rising number of drivers who are speaking out about those worries, Wallace's on-track punishment for his infraction did not fit the crime. Wallace should have responded in kind by either imitating Larson's play in turns 1 and 2 or by just pushing him too hard into turn 1 as a form of retaliation. But with the case of Christopher Bell in this specific event, NASCAR is compelled to take action if a collision between two drivers ends in the death of an innocent bystander. There are several people yelling for help, though we disagree that William Byron should not have got the same punishment. Byron simply spun the number 11 vehicle at Texas Motor Speedway as the yellow flag was being raised to express his displeasure with Denny Hamlin. According to Byron, he wasn't intentionally trying to cause the crash. The earlier incident didn't stop either driver from finishing the race. In contrast, Wallace deliberately collided with Larson as he was racing at full speed down one of the quickest tracks on the NASCAR circuit. Bell, a witness who was uninvolved and just happened to be a playoff contender, was involved in the incident. None of the three vehicles could proceed due to the damage. Each driver will experience a different set of repercussions as a result of the fact that there are numerous safety considerations at play in this situation. The original punishment for Byron, which included a $50,000 fine and 25 driver and owner points, was reversed, and he now only has to pay a $100,000 fine. There is no punishment or point loss associated with Wallace's one-race suspension. Wallace would have likely received the same penalty and points punishment as Byron had NASCAR not suspended him. On the other side, Byron would have faced a ban rather than a fine or a point penalty for his actions if he had rammed Hamlin into the wall and destroyed the number 11. Wallace's sentence for one race should also be limited to only one race in addition. The incident that occurred on Sunday was not the consequence of bottled-up resentment from prior matches because Larson and Wallace have never had any blatantly negative attitudes toward one another during the course of their careers. The bulk of multi-race suspensions are the result of simmering issues that lead to physical confrontations, such as the fight between Matt Kenseth and Joey Logano. Kenseth was disqualified for 2 races as a result of this incident in 2015. Considering that Wallace is one of NASCAR's most controversial drivers, some fans may claim that he ought to have been disqualified from additional races or possibly the remainder of the season, or that in addition to his suspension, he ought to have been fined or docked points. However, in the long run, it will be apparent that NASCAR made the right decision by imposing a straightforward one-race fine. People will learn about this after giving it some thought. On the other hand, imagine discovering that Bubba Wallace is the president of NASCAR when you awaken one lovely morning. Wallace was asked in 2017 what changes he would advocate for if, in a fictitious scenario, the drivers choose the NASCAR president and he ran for the position. Though not convinced he would have won the hypothetical election for president of the organization, but even today, people are still debating his claim on the scheduling improvements. The main criticism of NASCAR's schedule over the years has been made by fans who claim that the events have become monotonous and predictable. Furthermore, NASCAR does itself no favors by frequently holding races at the same intermediate track throughout a season. Fans contend that monotonous locations at less than ideal tracks cause the racing to become unimpressive. However, the overall schedule has only undergone a few minor alterations since the release of the 2023 calendar. One is the addition of 2 new tracks, namely the North Wilkesboro Speedway and the Chicago Street Race. The small adjustments could be a sign that the sport's organizers have finally discovered a timetable that works for them. However, given that interest in the sport has been declining, that might or might not be the case. The Daytona race's attendance just this year was significantly down from the previous year, primarily due to bad scheduling. Another defense is that NASCAR pushes its races all the way into the postseason in an effort to rival the NFL, which is the country's most popular sport. By removing speedways or short tracks throughout the years, NASCAR has also considerably increased the number of road courses. With a certain segment of the fan population, that has also not gone down well. On that note, that ends today's episode. If you have any questions on this topic, kindly post them in the comment box below. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more interesting videos. See you in our next videos.